What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Lock and Cash podcast. We are all recovered now. Bruce has had a little issue there where he turned into Hunter Hearst Helmsley. We not
Triple H all over my screen.
spit out
all over.
his drink, but I think he's all right now. You good now, man?
Yeah. I wish we got it on the podcast.
I know.
Just maybe I'll do it at the end. I'll just take a sip and just blow it.
Then if it works, but if people like it, then it has to be like the intro every week.
Gotta do it every time. I'm gonna have to drape everything in plastic.
You just constantly replacing equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
But we got an interesting week this week, man, because it's a holiday week. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy
and everyone else
Thanksgiving, my
watching.
friend. I'm thankful for you, Jeff.
Same here, man, and for everything that we've built. Honestly, for what we got going on here, even though we just started this podcast, we have a lot of other stuff, on the socials, and we have a lot of people now that come to us for this stuff. So feels good. Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah. You know who I'm not thankful for?
Who?
Zach Wilson.
Well, yeah. Well, guess what? It's like a Christmas miracle because he's gone.
Boyle boys. It's Boyle boys in the house. I'm starting a new fan club. If you guys want to join, slide into the DMs.
Yeah, and that's an interesting game. We're going to talk about Dolphins Jets as an interesting one because you have the quarterback change, and this is the first Black Friday NFL game, right? They've never done this before.
First one ever, and
So
you're going to get to see Tim Boyle in it
in prime time on Friday afternoon.
Just exactly what the NFL wanted was
Insane, dude.
To showcase to you.
Well,
Tim Boyle.
Leave it to the Jets to fucking ruin the first Black Friday game in the NFL history.
Yeah, you know what? Last week I said, tell your significant other that football is sacred and we only have it for a brief period of time. I'm walking all that back. Go, just go. Especially if you're a Jets fan, just go. Just don't put yourself through it. I'm flip-flopping hard. And you can at me. I don't care. It's just don't watch.
And don't online shop Black Friday. Go in person. Just get out of the house. Yeah.
Get trampled. Wait
in line. It's better than watching this game. Yeah, for sure.
If you get trampled by lines at Best Buy, at least your significant other would just know what the feeling is of watching the Jets.
There you go. That's right. Watching you go through that. That's right. Yeah, true. That's a tough game. But there are some bigger games this weekend. We're going to talk Michigan, Ohio State, which is a huge game on Saturday. Super Bowl for both of those teams, basically for their seasons. And then we'll get into some situational spots on Sunday in the NFL. A little bit of a lighter slate on Sunday because you have Thanksgiving games, but still NFL Sundays are always good to go. So let's start off with the Black Friday game. I got a lot of info on this Dolphins Jets game because even though it's not the most appealing game, it is an interesting spot because you have a double-digit home underdog, which I know a lot of people are just going to be like, because they just saw the Panthers get destroyed last week. But but historically, if that's a loss. I think they're 1-1 now this year, double-digit home dogs. The first one was Arizona winning outright against the Cowboys. Which
was a crazy spot. That was an icky spot to bet.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go back, Cowboys were so red hot.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals were like, they're not going to win a game this year.
Yep. They're tanking.
Who's Dobbs, right? Who's Josh Dobbs?
Who's Boyle? Like that kind of feels like
not going to be the same. No, it's not. But we'll get to that.
Yeah. So 1-1 this year, but historically, if you zoom out, it is a good spot. It's a 57% ATS spot. Last 20 years, double-digit home dogs are 72 and 52 against the spread. So, and a large part of what we'll talk about the quarterback situation and everything else, but a large part of what we do is just simply playing the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the Jets do have, even though they've been struggling a little bit lately, which I'll make a point about that, but they do have one of the better defenses in the league. And teams, I narrowed this down, teams that allow less than 25 points per game bumps that number up, that trend up of double-digit home dogs up to 66% against the spread, 35 and 18 ATS last 20 years. So it's a pretty long time period that we're looking at this. And the other thing that I'll say is, I think you pointed out before we went live that the last 3 games their defense has been giving up some points and some drives and stuff. And I think there's something to be said though about like the toll that it takes on your defense when your offense is so bad, you know? Like it's like, yes, you're going to be super motivated at the beginning of the year, maybe the first 6-7 weeks. And the offense is finding its footing. Maybe, there was a couple of games there where they showed some signs, but then when, then it's like every week after week turnover, punt, punt, punt. It
Yeah.
then starts to affect it does start to affect the defense at some point, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they're so bad. They're so inept on offense
Yeah.
that they're constantly putting the defense into bad spots,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And our boy Boyle, I don't know if it's going to get much better, Jeff. I don't think it's going to get much better.
Well, I know you said you watched a little bit of him in preseason. I mean, what do you give me? Because I don't know much about him. Give me what you think about Boyle.
I'll give you what I saw. I saw him in the preseason game. I was there preseason versus the Giants, and he looked much better than Zach Wilson in that game.
Okay.
He was making his reads much quicker. He was slinging the ball. He was getting it out, where I saw Zach holding onto the ball, locking onto one receiver. It was pretty painful to watch. I left that preseason game saying, oh my God, if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, please put in Tim Boyle instead of Zach Wilson.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was my opinion coming out of it, was I want Tim Boyle as backup if something goes wrong. Unfortunately, something went wrong in the first 57 seconds of that game. And we didn't get to see Tim Boyle until now, where it's like almost too late. But then I went back and I watched some Tim Boyle. And I don't know how confident I am about that statement anymore. He spent a year with Hackett in Green Bay in 2020. He's bounced around the league in the NFC North between Detroit, Chicago. He had some meaningful snaps in Detroit, but I mean, let me pull them up. He was, I don't know. He had 12 attempts in Detroit for 2 touchdowns. I think Chicago, he had some, he got some burn, but overall, like 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, nothing to write home about. I definitely saw him throw an interception into like literally no man's land when I was breaking it down. So while I think Tim Boyle is going to be more active in like getting the ball out, I do think that we're probably going to see more turnovers from this guy this weekend. Well, I think we're going to be targeting some Miami Dolphins.
Well, especially because, I mean, I definitely noticed that Zach Wilson was being like super careful with the ball. Yes. He was afraid to take chances.
Yeah.
Because of the turnover problem. So now if you put in a guy who's not afraid, so to your point, that could lead to more actual mistakes being made. Because even though Zach Wilson was not making like a ton of mistakes, but the offense was just not moving at all.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to take those shots sometimes,
And Boyle's going to go out there. He's going to sling it, right?
That's what I'm saying. He's nothing to lose. Yeah.
Remember, why do we keep getting quarterbacks like this? Remember back in the day on the Jets where Rex Ryan gave Mark Sanchez a colored wristband and he was like, green is go, red is take care of the ball. It's like, how are we back here again? What are we doing in New York?
Yeah, I don't really understand how. Yeah, it always comes full circle. And even when we went and got somebody, now he gets hurt.
Jesus Christ,
it's a tough franchise. Yeah.
So, but going back to Boyle, just one thing on Boyle. I have the regular season stats up now.
Oh yeah.
He started 5 games in Detroit. He was 0-3. No, he played in 5 games, started in 3. He's 0-3, 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 44 passing percentage. QBR was 26.
Okay. All right.
So, which I think if you extrapolate that out would be the lowest QBR in like starting history if you did that for 16 games. Wasn't great. When he was out there in Detroit.
3 touchdowns in 3 games is
6 interceptions
is more than
also.
I could, I mean, I could live with I don't know. Yeah, maybe there's some context missing, but I could live with some turnovers. Like as long as we're moving. Like one of the things I think about is the Broncos are a perfect example of of how the Jets could be playing. They're winning
Mm-hmm.
games with field goals. They're not scoring any
Yeah.
touchdowns. Like they did score one touchdown last week when they won, but we've cashed on the Broncos 3 straight times, and they've just been kicking field goals every time, and the Jets can't even get into field goal range. That's
No.
you know what I mean. So it's like if Boyle comes in and he's at least can dump off the ball a little bit and not be scared to maybe even run scramble whatever. If he's just not afraid to take some shots, get the team in field goal range, and then let your
Yeah.
defense do the rest. If you can put up, if you're the Jets, if you can put up 17-ish points a game, you're going to be in the game. You're not going to be blown out probably. The Dolphins have a really good offense, but look at what the Raiders did to them last week. The Raiders came in on the road, held them to 20 points. They're not invincible, right? The Dolphins are
Right.
not invincible, and it's a divisional game. So I just feel like you're just looking for anything here from the QB, man. Just anything to progress the drive a little bit. Like even if you just take up some time on the drives, it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like some time of possession, eat up some clock, like just anything. And I think you can keep them in this game. The other thing that I was going to ask you about was just looking at a 10-point home dog. And I know it's a different quarterback, and I know the Jets have been worse lately than they were earlier in the season. But they were in this exact spot against the Eagles at home, a six
Very
point
true.
dog,
Very
and they were
true.
in this exact spot at home against the Chiefs. And by the way, they won the game against the Eagles. Against the Chiefs, they lost by 3 at home as an 8-point dog, but now Miami is laying 10. Now, Miami's not better than those two teams. You could say the spot is different. Yeah, it's a little bit different, but I think just based on the line, there's a little bit of value there.
I agree there, right? And we know divisional games tend to get played
Yeah.
more closely
Yeah.
than others. Home Jets are home, divisional game. I can see how plus 10 is
Yeah.
a value here, especially when you do compare it to games like Philly, Kansas City,
Right.
which we should have won that game.
The
In
Kansas City game. Yeah, absolutely.
should have won outright.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
Travis Kelsey
Should have won that
nonsense.
game. 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's an interesting game. You do it also, by the way, since it's a spread that's higher than 9.5, the under immediately becomes in play for us because we know about that system. Spreads 9.5 or
right.
more, 59% last 10 years. Maybe look at the under, but the number's pretty low. I've noticed the books adjusting to these under trends, and these totals I've never seen so many totals in the 30s in the NFL. Like look at the
Yeah.
Browns Broncos is 35. You have you're seeing 38s every week. It's crazy how these books are adjusting. Eventually, the overs are going to start. They're going to just mathematically they're going to start cashing. So yeah, you got to be careful with that. But the Dolphins under hit easily last week. So just because they have a good offense doesn't mean the under can't come in. You know, but I think
For sure.
if we do play this game on Friday, if it ends up on our card, it'll probably be a small lean to the Jets plus 10. I think, like for me, this spot is either Jets or nothing in this game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the best way to play it. So that's on Black Friday, Dolphins versus Jets. So
Jets plus 10
should be a fun game. Jets plus 10. Yeah, I mean we can. How about a little Michigan Ohio State next up?
Yeah, with
Um,
no Harbaugh.
no Harbaugh. This one is interesting though because when he got suspended, right? Like it didn't seem to affect the team at all.
Mm-hmm.
They went into Penn State, came out with a win and a cover, and then took care of, I forgot who they played. Oh, Maryland took care of Maryland. Even though Maryland did cover the spread, it was like a 19-point spread or 17-point spread. But I think I just got a feel. Sometimes you just have a feeling about certain spots.
Yeah.
Like Michigan Ohio State is the biggest game in college football every year, and this year they're both undefeated. They're ranked 2 and 3 in the country. Right, Georgia's first, then it's Ohio State, then it's Michigan. So this is like whoever loses this game legitimately might be out of the college football playoff, right? Because it's just the top 4 teams until they expand. I think they're expanding next year, I think. But for now, it's just the top 4 teams. Whoever loses is probably out. And I just got a feeling like this is going to be like the first game where they miss him on the sideline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing too is like the offense has changed a little bit with him not there. Much more conservative, running the ball a lot more. Their rush rate has gone up. I think it was like mid 50s before. It's approaching 60% now, rushing the ball. So they're trying to be a lot more careful. It seems like to avoid any kind of big mistakes. But you're coming up now against Ohio State with Marvin Harrison Jr., the best wide receiver in the country. Like, they're going to be explosive. You have to find a way to generate some explosiveness. Like,
Yeah.
if you're just methodical 7-8 minute drives that end in field goals, which you've seen a lot from them lately. Like last week against Maryland, that would be a game they normally kill Maryland in that game. So I mean, I think if you see a lot of that, they're going to be in trouble. And then that also makes it so that's really difficult to play from behind. So if Ohio State jumps out, all they need is one big catch from Harrison Jr. They have a lead. Now suddenly you have to go away from what you've been doing without Harbaugh, which is being extra conservative, and start throwing the ball. I think it's a bad spot for Michigan. And at 3.5, I think is too high. I was surprised to see -3.5, that they're a -3.5 point favorite.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is like much closer to a pick 'em if I was making this line. +2,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, I agree. And when you look at the no Harbaugh, the unknown thing here is, where does he impact the game most for the
Yeah.
team, right? Is what kind of adjustments is he making in particular at halftime, in between quarters, in
Yeah.
between drives that really impact this? And like you said, they've been a lot more conservative, right? So you may be missing those
Yeah.
adjustments that
Yeah.
this team can make on the fly at this point. So I agree. One of the greatest coaches of
Yeah.
all time,
For sure.
basically, if you look at his career across the college and
Yeah.
the NFL. So it's going to be a tough one, and this is a big
Yeah.
pressure spot. These kids are out
Yes.
there with this rivalry on the line. Like it's a I
Yeah.
played football, high school, a little bit in college, and it feels different when you go out
Right.
there in a big rivalry game. The nerves are a little bit
Of course.
extra. So it's
Yeah.
definitely going to be a different spot than the past few games.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. The feel is different. Like, especially the beginning of the game where you kind of come out, you like feel each other out. That's why I know like a lot of people, a popular thing you'll see is people try to play first half unders in games like this because they like
Yeah.
feel each other out for a little bit early on. Then in the second half, it starts to open up a bit. But it's just like, yeah, absolutely. The adjustments that he would make on the sideline are going to be missed. I think like you didn't really need that against Penn State. Penn State's not explosive
Right.
offensively. If they can't move the ball on the ground, they're not going to kill you through the air, right?
Yeah.
And it's very hard to run the ball on Michigan. They have a good defensive front. And I think that's like if you flip that, like mirror it to this game, I think that's where Michigan's going to struggle because they're going to want to run. Blake Corum is one of the best backs in the country, and he's basically carrying the offense. But that defensive front of Ohio State, that's like an NFL defense. Those guys are going to be in the NFL. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like they stop the run really, really well, especially in between the tackles, like really, really well. So if you can't get that going, you're going to have to go to the passing game, and the passing game has just looked suspect lately. Like I think out of the two quarterbacks, Kyle McCord is set up much better right now for success than JJ McCarthy is. So I just see this as being definitely the first time during the suspension that you're gonna maybe want Harbaugh there. And if things start like all it takes is one, domino to fall, right? When the head coach is not there, like things have been fine. You didn't need him against Penn State, you didn't need him against Maryland. It takes one little one little, piece of adversity to pop up. You're down 10-0, let's say, in the second quarter. The game's not over, right? But now it's like adversity. And that's all it takes before the floodgates open if someone's not there to like reel it in. I think
Yeah.
I kind of get the vibe from that. And on top of that, I just think more than a field goal is too much in a game like this. So getting 3.5 with what I think is the better team that has more playmakers on offense, and a team that has a better defensive front. I think that defensive front is going to cause some issues too. They can get pressure on the quarterback. I just think there's too many advantages for Ohio State. Even though they haven't looked like early in the season, they didn't look great, and now they've picked it up. But a game like this is a game that they show up for.
Yeah.
So I think Ohio State +3.5 will almost certainly be a play for us this weekend in this game.
Love it. And you know what I love most about that? This is like one of the less Jeff-like picks of the slate because we're very much about like what does the system say, what do the numbers say, what does the
Yeah.
spot say, and on this one you're like
I
got
just
a
got a
gut,
feeling. Yeah.
got a
Yeah. Yeah.
feeling. I
And
got
I, yeah, no, that's a good point. And I,
feel it in my bones.
but I would bet, but I honestly would bet that when I go to do the write up for this, I bet if I look like underdogs in this rivalry, I bet you they're profitable because you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
especially when which there's ways to check this, but especially when the weaker offensive team is the favored one, like
Mm-hmm.
so we've talked before about how college home field is worth more than NFL home field. Like this 3.5 could literally just be because they're at home. You know,
Right.
like 4 points is realistic if you're an odds maker or if you're a handicapper. You try to set 4 points is realistic for a college football home field. In the NFL, it's like 1.5.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this could legitimately be a line where if you threw them on a neutral field, Ohio State's the favorite, but it's just because this is at Michigan. But I don't think it's justified personally. The spot doesn't line up well here for them. And I like them when Harbaugh first got suspended. I remember we did a show and I liked them against Penn
Yeah.
State. Yeah, I like
Right.
them in that spot. I don't like, but I think this is the spot where it finally rears its ugly head. They get their first loss here, I think. So
Oof. All right. So we're going Ohio
and
State.
potentially out of the. If you look at it, then what do you got? Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and Florida State. Florida State, they just lost the QB, which is brutal, but they're still undefeated.
Mhm.
Maybe they don't make it in. Alabama's creeping up. They're going to obviously want a spot in. Yeah, it's a tough call. If Michigan loses this game, they could legitimately be out of the college football playoff. Which I'm glad they're expanding it because it does suck to just have like, oh, you lose one game against a great team and you're just out.
Yeah,
Your
one of the
season's
best in
over.
the country.
Yeah, that's it. Like like that shouldn't be the case. So when they expand it, it's going to be nice because we want to see all these teams play for a championship. Like you don't want it to just be Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State every single year. You want to see some other like it was fun when TCU was in there last year, even though they got destroyed. But it was fun when they were in there. In the
got some
natty.
good TCU bets last year. Some real,
yeah. That the run they had up to it was just ridiculous.
Some really good TCU bets.
And they beat Michigan as 8-point dogs in the first round of the playoff, which was nuts. No one thought that was going to happen. So
except for Jeff. All right, cool. So we got the Ohio State, University at plus 3.5. Yeah. We hopping back over to the NFL to talk about the one of my second least favorite division in pro football.
What, the AFC South? Why is that?
It's like AFC South and NFC South is like
they both suck.
Two of the most lamest divisions in the NFL.
Definitely the NFC South. That one's terrible.
Yeah. NFC South, somebody has to win. Somebody has to win it. I remember, but you got to watch out. You got to watch out because I remember we said the same thing about the Seahawks years ago when they won they were like 8-9 or something, like 7-8 or I think they were 7-8, and they had no shot going up against New Orleans in the first round. And they beat them. Once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. I'm pretty sure that was a beast mode run in that game, right?
Yeah, I believe
that was
so. Yeah. Totally anything could happen in the NFL. It's one game, dude. Think about how
right.
insane that is. One mistake, and your season could be over.
Yeah. So I wouldn't fade them. I wouldn't fade the NFC South, but man.
Well,
I hope
the Falcons win it so
division.
I can fade them in the first round. Falcons are terrible. If the Saints, I think, are a different story, but the Falcons, no. But
oh my god!
But that
all right, let's hop over.
Could legitimately be decided this weekend because you have Saints Falcons, and then I think they play each other one more time, so that could be it. That could be it right there. Those two games could decide the division, unless Tampa makes some kind of comeback.
I hope you're taking the over because I have so many players on both sides on my fantasy team that if you are taking the under in there, I'm pretty sure I'm getting eliminated from the playoffs.
You got Olave, you got Bijan, right? Yeah, true.
Everybody, just
tough game.
Anyone. Anyways, let's hop over. To the AFC South where we got a divisional matchup.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight this as my situational spot of the week. So last week, the situational spot I was talking about was Cleveland came through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland versus Pittsburgh, and then oh,
Barely,
barely,
but
yeah,
it, it, it
that was
did.
insane, yeah,
That
and
you had a
it
tight week.
yeah, seriously. We had the Rams who won by a field goal. We had the Browns that won by a field goal. We had the Broncos in our Sunday parlay. They won by a field goal. It was just nuts. Yeah, it was
Just,
insane.
just
Our only loss was in the Panthers game. We almost swept Week 11, but we just had the one loss. Uh, but yeah, Jaguars Texans is a very interesting game because first of all, just like if you're a seasoned handicapper, right? Which I know you know this. Just if you just open up that game and you're like Jaguars -1.5, that should immediately be like, whoa, right? Because like that spread should jump out at you right away. If I showed you that game before the season, I know it's been 10 weeks, but before the season
yeah,
started, you would go to bet your house on Jacksonville if I showed
yeah,
you that spread, right? So, but this is obviously not the Texans that we're used to seeing. This is the CJ Stroud era. So I think it's a really important thing to understand, though, that certain lines just jump off the board at you. This is a line that jumps out. It's like, whoa, the Jags made a playoff push last year. They won a playoff game, won the division. Like this line should be a little bit higher against a rookie quarterback, but it's not. It's not for a reason. So they're actually in a bad spot. So if we take a look, one of the things that, and by the way, I think, dude, that we can call this the first ever like lock and cash system. Like I've tried finding this everywhere. I can't find it. I don't know if I know articles on it. Nobody really
yeah.
talks about it, but I was interested last season. I was like, I bet. I was like, because sometimes I just like be thinking, brainstorming in my head, right? I was like, I bet teams that play back to back divisional games probably like suck in the second one, right? And I
Yep.
couldn't. And at first, I didn't really find a correlation until I looked at like the lines. So teams that play back-to-back divisional games when they're favored in both games, that's actually where it comes back to bite them. So the Jags are in this spot this week. They played the Titans last week, who they destroyed, right? They were a 7-point favorite in that game. So now they're a favorite again in this game, a small favorite. But teams that play back to back divisional games, when they won the first game and they're favored in the second game, last 20 years, they're just 35% against the spread, which means
Ooh.
the opposite side is cashing at 65%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty big trend to me, especially when you're going up against someone like CJ Stroud. He hasn't covered a spread yet as a favorite because we cashed Arizona +6 on Sunday, right?
Right.
But he's been awesome as I think he's only lost one as a dog, and it was week 1 when they were a big dog to the Ravens. They got blown out. But
Right.
since then, perfect against the spread as a dog. So the market is like, kind of iffy on him so far. When they make him a dog, he excels. When they make him a favorite, he doesn't cover the spread, right? And then just the back-to-back divisional games thing for Jacksonville, even though last week there was an easy win for them, is still always a tough spot. And you add in travel, right? The Jags were home, they're traveling. The Texans are playing their second straight home game, so they didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
travel. There's a
Right.
lot to like, I think, about Houston in this spot. And I always also look at like how each team did last year, right? So the Texans were obviously not good last year, right? The Jags won the division last year. They played great. They got to the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They're playing again this year. But you have like the almost like the hungry dog, up and coming hungry dog vibe with this Texans team. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like it's like you're not going to come in here and this is not just going to be easy when you come in here. You think you're just going to get an easy win. It's not going to work
Yeah.
out. And I think CJ Stroud's, it's just like this just feels to me like a game where he shows out and they win this game outright as a small dog.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's been keeping them in games all season. He's
Yeah.
been leading them to multiple comebacks all season. Trevor Lawrence looked great last week. He hasn't looked great for a lot of the season, right?
Yeah.
They've been really leaning on that run game tremendously to get points on the board. So I do like this. The one thing that the Texans wide receiver core is a bit banged up.
Yeah.
We saw Brown out last week with a knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
And how'd CJ Stroud do in that game?
Yeah.
How many interceptions did he throw
Yeah. He threw a
in that?
couple. Yeah. He didn't. He wasn't
Yeah.
great. Yeah. I think.
Three. So
Did you know three or two? Two or three? He's right.
I think he threw three. Yeah. Let me
Yeah.
look that up.
Yes, yeah. That's why I love the Cardinals in that spot. It was a look ahead spot for Houston last week, kind of looking ahead to this big divisional game. Like this, you think about this game, this is the going to be the biggest game of CJ Stroud's career so far.
Yeah.
This is a massive game. To
Gigantic spot. And
Yeah,
if they win this one, they go up against Denver, who's been playing a lot better,
yeah,
but it's still very beatable. Then the Jets,
yep,
and then Tennessee. They have
exactly.
Tennessee twice before the end of the season. It's
Yeah,
like
that's a great point.
you could
Yeah,
really string together some wins and win
oh
that
yeah,
division. You still got
yeah,
Tennessee twice.
yeah.
Those guys,
This
they don't
is
know what's going on right
this
now.
is the one. This is kind of like the one blip on their radar where if they can get by this game, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great point. They have it's kind of like smooth sailing ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, but Stroud, he threw 3 picks last week. He was missing Brown, who's had multiple 100-yard games and touchdowns
Yeah,
since getting back to the starting lineup after that injury. Back out with a knee injury now for 1 to 2 weeks. So I'd really like to see how you get production from Nico
yeah,
Collins and Robert Woods, the ghost of Robert Woods. There's there they those guys need to show out
yeah,
or this doesn't happen. So
yeah, yeah. I do.
but
I
I
do
do
think.
agree there's value there.
Yeah, I think to your point, it'll be a lower scoring game. It's not. This is not going to be like the first game. So if you remember the first game, the Texans blew them out.
Yeah.
Like I think it was 37-17 was the score. This is not going to be that, and that was in Jacksonville. So
Ooh.
this is not going to be that. I think it's going to be much more competitive on the lower scoring end. I would lean to the under on the total, but yeah, absolutely, he's going to have to find ways to generate offense. I think the picks from last week could, this is always just speculation, but I always look for the look ahead spot, which is one of the reasons why I loved Arizona so much, especially when that line got to
Mm-hmm.
6, like key number, right? When it got to 6, I was like, oh, we have to play it.
Right.
And it ended up losing by 5, which is crazy. So
Yeah.
it's so
Something there.
nuts. If you got it at the opener 4, you lose, and sometimes it's better to just wait.
Yeah.
Um, but I like Houston in this spot too. This is such a big game, dude. This is gonna be like you don't really ever see many people talk about it, but it's such a huge game, and it's at
Yeah. It-
home for a rookie quarterback who's been playing out of his mind. He has a bad game last week. Is this a bounce back, or is it now fine? Like, oh, he's exposed, kind of thing. There's so many ways you can look at it. But I like to play against that. Anytime I find a system that's not just purely based on line, like on line value, like the Jets one, right? The double digit home dog. That's all it's based on, right? But
right.
anytime I find a system that's like situational, like, oh, they're playing back to back divisional games, they won the first one, now they got to win the set, like that kind of thing. I love playing against those angles, which is what makes me immediately jump to Houston in this game. And then the spread too. We were talking about line psychology before, right? Like the how odds makers set specific line. There's some lines that they just set because it's just like set it and let's get the handles balanced out and that's it. There's some lines they set for a reason. I feel like this is one of those lines when I look at it. It's like you're going to get easy public money on Jacksonville. I can actually check where the money is, but it feels like you're going to get square money on Jacksonville here when I think Houston's the right side, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You should check what that handle looks like. But I do agree that the back to back getting up for both games, we could
Yeah,
definitely see Texans cover. And uh, I know you look at the divisional splits a lot too. So
yeah,
do you think that has any weight
yep.
on this matchup
Oh
where we
no, no,
saw
for sure.
Houston take the first one?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That would be like a notch for the Jags, right? That they lost the
Right.
first game. And they weren't at that time, that was like a bit earlier in the season. They weren't playing as well as they are now. Even like if we just get rid of the one outlier was the San Francisco game, they got annihilated. But other than that, they've been playing better. They started off the season a little shaky. They've been playing better. But yeah, for sure, that's like a side if you like Jacksonville, you would say, well, they lost the first game. Let's look at divisional splits. Like, and that's also like we get that question a lot in emails. Like if I'll write up a like an analysis for a play one day, right? And the next day I might be on that, like I might be going against that team even if they won us the bet, right? Maybe I'd be favored that
Right.
team the next day. And they're like, but you said this yesterday. And I'm like, it's every single game that you handicap, you can find systems for both sides of the game, and you can find reasons to bet both sides of the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at the end of the day, it just comes down to the line and which systems you hold you think have more weight, right?
Right.
So like if there's some system where it's like, oh, if this team is playing on the road and they just had a short week or whatever, like some systems are not as powerful. I
Right.
I think the back-to-back divisional angle with being favored in both games on the road in the second game after you won the first game, like I like that a lot. And the fact that it's 65%, it's robust. Yeah.
And that's a lock and cash system.
Ah, there you go. Boom.
That's the first one.
Plus 1.5.
Oh man,
Texans.
I really hope
we got to publish
guys,
a book.
Really hope
right?
this one wins.
Yeah, that's right. We announce it and they lose, they get crushed.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like we literally trademarked it as a lock and cash system. So like it has to win. It has to go
100%.
Yeah. All right. Let's so we got so far this week we're leaning Dolphins versus Jets. We're leaning Jets. Plus 10. Jacksonville, Houston, we're leaning Texans plus 1.5. And Michigan versus the Ohio State University, we are leaning Ohio State 3.5.
Yeah.
But
all dogs.
All dogs, which is my style. So let's but speaking of plus money, yes. I know you got a little long shot. Little pocket change parlay for us.
Yeah, we're running a little bit long. Let's get to the parlay. Okay, cool. So, interesting thing though, can I just say, last week a little annoying because we record the podcast early, and I go Browns money line, Cardinals plus 4, and obviously that did not hit. But if you did the parlay, if for whatever reason you were watching the pod on Sunday morning and you took Browns money line, Cardinals plus 6, then the parlay hit. So it's like, because they lost by 5.
I'm gonna count that as a win.
I count that as a win. That's what I'm saying. I kind of feel like that counts as a little win. And plus we had Cardinals plus 6 on our actual card. So the plus 4 was like, you can't control the way the market moves. But I even saw, even though they didn't cover the 4, I saw value on the 4. So when I saw 6, I was like, we got to bet this. This is an auto bet. So, but this week I'm going to go, okay, so pocket change parlay of the week. The first leg, we're going to go with the team I just talked about. We're going to go Texans, okay, money line. That they're plus 105. So I like that. I feel strongly about that game. You know my angles for it.
Yep.
Situational spot with the Jags playing back-to-back divisional games. So I like Houston in that spot. The second one, I'm going to go to your other favorite division, and we're going to take the Atlanta Falcons, right? So the Falcons, this is another interesting game because it opened at a pick. It's now, the Falcons are getting boosted a little bit. They're minus 115, but I would throw them in. They're on a bit of a losing streak. This is like one of those spots where I just feel like teams left for dead, but they're coming back home out of the bye week. They've been much, much better at home than on the road. The Saints have been starting to get exposed a little bit on the defensive side. Big divisional game. It's actually interesting. Road divisional underdogs do really well when the spread is 3.5 or higher, right? Oh, excuse me, right? But when you look at divisional games like the one we had last week with the Browns Steelers, when the spread's less than 2 in a divisional game, it actually favors the home team significantly, right? And that kind of makes sense because it's a lot of 3-point field goal finishes for the home team, where if the spread's bigger, the road divisional dog would still cover, but in this case, they wouldn't. So I like Atlanta in this game. I think the spot sets up well for them to bounce back. And maybe the bye week will fix some of the problems that they have. Who knows? He's like, no, they won't.
No, not with Coach Smith. Put in Bijan as a water boy strategically. Strategic water boy
more. Watch,
duty.
See. He's gonna put him.
I need it
on punt returns specifically.
He was playing punt returns last game.
I know.
Somebody tried to. We can probably cut this, but somebody tried to trade me Bijan Robinson, and I was like, nah, man, listen, he's getting utilized in punts now, so I really think there's some upside.
Yeah, forget it. I'll hold on to him. I'll take my chance.
I'm gonna hold on to him. I can get a punt return touchdown now.
Oh man. All right. So third leg. So we got Texans, Falcons, and then Sunday Night Football. Very short, simple, sweet. The Ravens minus 200 against the Chargers. I've given up trying to say the Ravens aren't good. They're destroying every team that they play. I took I took their team total under. They're going to win 15 games. Just
Yep.
it's the Ravens. All right. So Texans, Falcons, Ravens is plus 470. That's the pocket change parlay.
Woo! I do not have one. I am taking a week off
Cool.
because UFC
no
is
UFC.
taking a week off.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next week with
Sweet.
some picks there.
Oh, also, I'll just give out the quick teaser. I'm going to put this on TikTok and Instagram, but we're going to be teasing the Texans plus 1.5 up to plus 7.5, Cleveland plus 2.5 up to plus 8.5. That Cleveland line, dude, is just like the Browns at Broncos plus 2.5. It's begging you to tease it, which makes me a little bit nervous, but
yeah,
we'll tease it anyway. I can't see the Broncos winning by more than 3 points in that game if they do win. So,
yeah.
So Texans, Browns tease, and I know it's like you're hearing a lot of Texans, right? But like if you find a spot that you really like, you could play it in multiple ways. Like we might end up just putting them in the teaser and that's it. Or I might say, hey, I'm going to straight bet them to get the plus money on the money line, and I'm going to put them in the teaser. As long as you don't overexpose yourself, like you don't want to go like 3 units on both. Now you have 6 units pending on the Texans, and they're down by 3 with a minute left, and you have a 12-unit swing coming your way, and you're like, what the, you know what I mean? Like, as long as you don't overexpose yourself, you can play them in different ways. So, but the teaser that I'll give out is Houston and Cleveland. And
if the Texans win, Texans lose, this whole podcast is ruined.
Just destroy it. Yeah, throw it out.
Just
the system that we branded is gone. The teaser's gone.
Yeah. Texans are bust this week, guys. We're actually going to close up shop if the Texans lose. So
this doesn't feel great. This podcast is riding on the Jets and the Texans.
Icky. Well, that's what being a professional feels like. Where you're laying money on the Texans and the Jets, and that's your weekend. You're going to be in Home Goods looking at your favorite scoring app, asking, why did I put money on the Jets and the Texans right before kickoff?
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, maybe next week we'll try to give you guys some more attractive plays, but hey, man, sometimes there's value on the gross teams. Like Denver. We've cashed Denver 3 weeks in a row.
Right.
And twice as 7-point dogs. So, we had plus 280 against the Chiefs, plus 280 against the Bills. So sometimes the shitty teams can help you out a little bit. I know. I see the look on your face and you're like, not this week.
Well, on that note, guys.
All right.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Or if you're seeing this after, I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And then, Jeff, where can they find us?
Yeah, Lock and Cash Sports on TikTok and Instagram, Lock and Cash on Twitter. Now you got us on YouTube over here. We're doing everything. Weekend passes up already now, so that'll get you the Thanksgiving plays all the way through to the end of NFL Sunday. And Code Month 50 still in the profile on our socials, which is you can get that only in our link tree. Just it's a 50% off code. Bunch of stuff in there. We always got deals going, man. We're not like the rest. Yeah. We always got something going on to keep it fresh.
Yeah. Let's give out a couple hats.
Got to do it. Hats?
Yeah, let's give out a couple hats. Let's
like
do it
what,
on TikTok.
Like on social or something? Like
Yeah.
We should do that.
We're giving out hats. If you're watching this, find us somewhere on TikTok or on YouTube and comment. We're giving out hats.
Say, I want my hat.
Yeah.
And then we should cook up something. We'll come up with something, a post or something, and then have some criteria, and then 3 people get a hat or something like that.
Yeah. A random assortment of people are getting hats. I don't know how many.
Gotcha. That works.
Cool.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right, guys. See you next week. Peace.